Hello and welcome to Blockleaders.io with me, Gillian Gossel. Today I'm very proud to have as my guest William Quigley, who's the Managing Director of Magnetic Capital and co-founder of Wax.io. Hello and welcome to the show, William.
Hello again.
Yes, it was about 2 years ago, I think we were talking before, and
Yes.
lots happened since, and in the world, not just in our lives. So it's going to be a bit mad. So I want to start off with throwing just some things at you from your career before we go. I do want to talk about Wax, but what I was reading about you recently again, and you're going to recognize this, but kind of like the art of the hustle. You kind of grew up with no money, but plenty of entrepreneurial zeal. So
True.
Discuss.
Yeah, well, I had a mother who came from Ireland who was a hustler herself, right? I think she came over when she was 15 to the U.S. Didn't need much of a green card or a visa back then. You just stayed if you were Irish. It's pretty much how it worked. So she came to New York and found a group of Irish people who said, hey, we've got a job for you, and then eventually migrated over to California. And she had been married and had kids, and then my dad disappeared one day, so she was forced to figure out how to make a living. And someone who didn't have much education and wasn't in the U.S. legally, that wasn't so easy to do. But she was very enterprising, and we found she put the kids to work, and she found herself just accidentally found a business that wound up being a marvelous business for us. And that was non-emergency medical transportation, because she had taken somebody who lived near us to a dialysis center. And the woman had given my mom $20, a lot of money back then. And she was like, no, I can't take that. And she's like, no, this, the government pays for me to get transported. And, they didn't show up, so you had to take me. And my mom had asked, are there other people like you? Oh yeah, lots. And so got a van, started transporting people, another van. Eventually had the biggest medical transportation company in California.
Wow.
And obviously she was not, she didn't have an MBA, not schooled in any particular business, but something that as a venture capitalist, I have really come to consider one of my rules, which is, experience, background. I will trade away all of those for somebody with really good judgment. Judgment is the rarest of skills. It's the rarest of capabilities. When people ask me, like, what are you looking for in a CEO? And I always say, look, at the end of the day, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what situation your company is going to be in. So you can't look for the ideal person who has that background, because situations change. The company may pivot. But people who have good judgment figure it out. And in my experience, it's not age related. It's not experience related. I've had 23-year-olds with better judgments than 50-year-old vice presidents. And so one of the things I hope I inherited a bit from my mom was good judgment. She had outstanding judgment. And, and so, she was able to build up a nice business and take care of her family. And, and it was always hustling, always finding little side gigs. And it took a long time, by the way, for me to understand the concept of scalability, that if you are manually doing something, you can only get paid so much per hour. You got to figure out a way to leverage other things, machinery, automation, people. So hence why I wound up in tech, of course. And then as a venture capitalist, because we're just leveraging our money in order to get someone else's business to grow. So yeah, that's
the art of the hustle. The art of the hustle. It's much underestimated. You're right. People get their MBAs and their fancy degrees, and unless they can do, simple cop-on stuff, they're no good to anybody.
It's so true. It's like, I've got lots of theories. One of my theories is that a business makes its money and makes its mark in a very short period of time. It may be kind of diddling around for years trying to find where the real business value is. But when that opportunity strikes, you got to jump at it. And I've just seen so many times people just kind of dither away when it's like, hey, wait a minute, what about that thing, over there? And I see this in crypto all the time. Somebody says, here I am, operations manager. I know nothing about PR, but we really need to be talking to somebody over in the, the media side about what we're doing. And they just go and take the initiative and do it. And do I like finding people like that. And it seems to me that there's not enough of those people in companies. Like, just, it's whatever you want to call it, initiative or hustle. But, there's this sense a lot of people have that, because we live in an age where everyone's an expert. Yes. Oh, I don't understand social media. I don't understand PR. I don't understand coding. Yeah, but you can still contribute a lot, even if you're not an expert. I see this every day in my business. People do stuff, and this wasn't their assigned job. They just did it. They're like, oh, somebody should do this. No one's around. I'll do it.
Oh, that's kind of cool. So they see an opportunity and they just do it. It's just, obviously, with blessing, whatever, they're not going to go crazy. But yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because this is the path we're on. Oh, guess what? The path doesn't exist anymore in coronavirus times. Totally. So, or opportunity doesn't always come neatly packaged with a bow on it.
Yeah, there's an old phrase I heard once, you make your plans and God laughs.
Yeah.
Right? It's something like that.
Yeah, men something and God laughs, or dithers, or yes, it's man.
Something like that.
I'll find it afterwards, yeah. It's very true. For COVID. Very true. So tell me, I understand you're a libertarian. How has that, or with the philosophy, how has that philosophy influenced your business workings?
Well, I guess very deeply in a lot of ways. I mean, I've like venture capital, right? That's about really the free market, looking around at people trying to innovate and improve things, and giving them the capital to do it. Not sitting behind some bureaucratic bank saying, I don't know if I can give you a loan because you don't meet these requirements. So that the whole idea of venture capital is really to try to like break through all of the status quo and do something better. And when it comes to hiring people, I look for people who are open-minded, are able to look at any situation from multiple angles. And I think my friends who are libertarians tend to be the most flexible mentally for taking a look at something and saying, well, on this level it looks okay, but on this level it looks like it's a bad thing, right? I would like all customer service agents of the world to be libertarians, as opposed to top down, you must do it this way, too bad. I really think libertarians are underappreciated. And part of the reason for that is that the libertarian message often sounds harsh. It's not as appealing as the progressive message, which is, we'll take care of you, right? The libertarian message is, we are going to ensure that there's a fair playing field for everybody. No crony capitalism, no master you have to report to if you want to, remodel. And I often think, like a lot of things in this day and age, the philosophies of libertarians can be reduced to almost caricatures. So the standard caricature would be, well, you just want, capitalism run amok, and no accountability and no regulations, which, is silly. Capitalism requires two things to exist. And without these, it really can't. The first is rule of law, right? I mean, you can't have a contract without an enforcement mechanism. And then property rights, the ability to do something with your property, turn it into something productive. And so I often educate people about that. I say, libertarians like free market capitalism. And what you see out there in the world, guys, is not free market capitalism.
That's
it is
very true.
Weird thing, right? God forbid, it pains me when I hear people say, but look at what happened in 2008. The banks, they were run amok capitalism. And it's like, oh my God, are you kidding? It was the furthest thing from capitalism. These were institutions too big to fail, which were taking money recklessly from depositors only because the federal governments had guaranteed it. That certainly isn't capitalism.
No, in Ireland, we had the public purse bailed out the private banks. Weird or what? Like it doesn't make any sense. Right. That's not capitalism. Right. That's cronyism.
Yeah, it's cronyism.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's a lot of good things. I like that. Okay, the customer, right? The customer needs to be curious. How do you provide that level of interest?
Well, when it comes to a customer, right? I don't know necessarily if the customer needs to be curious, but your customer support certainly does to fully understand the problem at hand. My philosophy about customer service is comes from my days at Disney, and it's enshrined in this phrase I often say, which is consumers pray to the God of convenience. Consumers will always defer towards the most convenient path. That's good and it's bad, right? Consumers will bypass password protection if you let them, because it's not convenient. They will buy a lower quality, less reliable, even more expensive product if it's easier to use. And I often say, like, how is it that somebody like me that puts so much effort into making things easy and convenient for the customer wound up in blockchain, which is
I have no idea. It's a good question.
The least customer-friendly technology ever invented, right?
Yeah.
But we're starting to move a little bit in that direction, and you're seeing when things are convenient in crypto, the take rate is just so much higher than it was in the past. So I guess that's what I would say about the customer.
Convenience, not curiosity, is the killer.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Curious customers can be good, right?
Yeah.
They can also be a pain.
Yeah.
But it's shocking to me how this lesson continues to have to be pushed, that customers will always defer to that which is most convenient. And you see this in the app explosion. You had things that were slightly more convenient on an app than they were going and sitting down in front of your computer on a website. And that tiny little removal of friction caused a giant adoption curve for the app. But now, to be fair, often to make things convenient is a very trying exercise. Try to make crypto convenient. I tip my hat to companies when I look at them and I say, wow, you have made the process to sign up, to figure out what the product offerings are. You've made it incredibly easy, and you get rewarded for it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. So convenience, not curiosity. You've been part of a number of bubbles, the Japanese bubble, the global financial bubble, and now COVID. What lessons have we learned from those, and are they different? We have two financial, one, well, this is turning to financial now too. So what lessons are they different?
Yeah, we could have a whole show on that. But, so as far as, I don't know if we've learned any lessons because we repeat them. So in 1988 in the United States, the once in a century financial crisis occurred, which was when the savings and loan institutions, these quasi banks, had gotten overextended, and $1 trillion of their assets was impaired, and this caused a great deal of anxiety. A special branch of the federal government was created called the Resolution Trust Corporation, and we had to dispose of all these assets. And that, I was part of that. I was a consultant working for Resolution Trust Corporation, and helping them to dispose of assets. And one of the things that I learned from that experience, and then the dot-com rise and bubble, and then the housing bubble and crash, and then crypto bubble and crash. So here's the biggest lesson I would give to your audience, which is during that period of peak like negative sentiment, it is incredibly difficult for most people to imagine a year from now when things will be markedly better and the assets that they're holding will be worth a lot more. It's human nature, of course, that to extrapolate from the most recent past. We even have a word for it, a phrase, we call it recency bias. And if things are going really well recently, most of us think they're going to continue, and the reverse is also true. So by the dot-com bubble, when it went up, and of course you don't know it's a bubble until it collapses, I started to see, I didn't leave venture capital like a lot of people did. I thought, you know what? It's going to be bleak for a few years, but man, there's still lots of innovation to be done. And then as housing started to pop, I wasn't involved directly in real estate other than what I own, for my own self and usage. But I started to feel like these valuations were getting a little ahead of themselves. I didn't realize how true that really was. And post the housing crisis, so call it like 2009 and 10, I did what I did in the late 80s. I was buying deeply distressed properties. And the only thing I will tell you that's been surprising to me is that even after I've now seen 4 of these bubbles, and the pattern is always the same, yet again, there's always opportunities for someone who says, look, I'm going to, hold my nose and just go buy some assets here and hope for the best. In fact, if you look, we peaked in the U.S. stock market, the S&P 500. It began the year at like 3,100 or 3,200, peaked at about 3,400 in mid-February. About roughly a month later, March 20th, 23rd, we were the lowest point of the year. We were down to like 2,100, and everybody was saying we're going to go to below 1,000, right? Because they're looking at what had happened, and I did not feel that way. I thought in a couple of years we'll get back to 3,000. Well, no, it took a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Now your audience will probably say, well, yeah, but that's because the United States has been, through quantitative easing and these other sort of monetary policies pumping trillions into the economy. Fair enough. But the point is, something happened that prevented those assets from going to zero. And you didn't know necessarily what the low point was. I actually have a rule of thumb I'll share with your listeners. So since you never know what the low point is, mine is this. As I'm watching something fall, whether it's Ethereum or stocks or whatever, what I typically do is I wait until we've recovered from about 25% from the low. So it's moved up about 25% from the low. That has worked for me. At one point I tried 10%, and it was what they call a dead cat bounce. And I lost money. Yeah. So the biggest risk of exiting a market as it's dropping because you're afraid of losses, I'll tell you what the biggest risk is. You never get back. That's
so a bit of a hodler, sort of.
Yes,
hodler, and the 25% is when you get back into the market again.
Yeah. Now, usually I don't even sell during these secular downturns. Yeah. Because I find market timing to be immensely difficult, right? So obviously, if I knew when things were going to fall and how low they were going to go, I'd get back in at the optimal time, but I don't. So I may take some of my position off the table, but I generally wait until about 25%. We're above about 25% of where the low is to get back in. It doesn't mean that's foolproof, but the reason I do that is because there were times when I didn't get back in. I still thought, oh, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And then you realize, oh, wow, you know what? From the date I sold, we're now 2x higher than that. So I missed the opportunity. And what we're seeing, at least during my lifetime, and I think this will continue, is cycles are compressing, right? How long companies remain dominant is compressing. How long a product remains a popular product is compressing. The time span between peak bubble, the trough, and going back up is also compressing. I mean, it's remarkable, right? We had the worst, I think March was the worst month for equities in the United States. And I believe April 2020 was the best month in history for equities, or very close. Think about that.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 So not losing your nerve. And if things are going down, saying, right, there's a certain amount.
Yeah. Now, I'm not a professional stock trader either, right? So I suspect if I was running a hedge fund, I'd get fired, right? Because, you know,
and this is not financial advice.
Right. But this is just me as a guy who's like built companies, been a venture capitalist. And then it's like, I look at assets, you know, going up and going down, and sentiment can change so quickly. And, you know, so right now, by the way, another thing I would share with your audience is, because I think it drives most people crazy when they hear of this terrible financial news, and then they're watching the television and the stock market is shooting up, right? And so they're like, this makes no sense. And it doesn't make sense if that's how the market actually worked, but it doesn't, of course. The market is all about expectations of the future. So what's changing is sentiment about the future. So we have, 40 million Americans who've been laid off, and people are like, and the market's shooting up. It's like, it's just morally wrong, and there's something wrong. Actually, what's happening is people are expecting what we call a V-shaped recovery, right? They're expecting that when things get turned back on, because remember, this is a man-made crisis. We turned, the virus wasn't, but we turned off society.
It's a very different crisis, isn't it?
It's self-imposed.
Yeah.
So once we relax the restrictions, most people will go back to old habits. And that's why people expect this V-shaped recovery in the second half of the year. So here's what I constantly look at with my team. What is the consensus view of how things are going to roll out in the future? It's very important. Whether consensus is right or wrong is almost immaterial. You just want to know, what are people expecting? So for your audience, I'll tell you, the bulk of the world of stock traders are expecting, come July, August, September, there will be a mad rush back into the economy by all these currently furloughed workers. And that will drive consumer spending, which will drive economic growth, and everything will be great. So if that does not happen, then that's the thing we would be worried about, right? So it's incredibly important to understand the consensus. If you don't understand what the consensus is, then you don't actually know what good news is and what bad news is.